Good Friday morning. Thank you for tuning in to the Garden of Sequoia program, a Friday feature here on TV Channel 10, located on Charter Communications, Channel 191, and also on WKRX 96.7 FM. My name is Rob Hall. We welcome you into the program that's brought to you today by Sandling Golf Cars, Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride, premium pimento cheese spread and dip, and T.G. Brooks Company, located in Timberlake. They've been there since 1936. I'd like to make welcome to a show a man that hadn't been around that many years, but he still has a lot of knowledge. All the way from the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service, a man that spends some of his time in person and some of his time in Granville counties. If you would please make welcome the director of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service, Mr. Paul Westfall.
In person in Granville County.
That's right.
I don't want to get the real director mad at me.
That's right.
But, wow, what an introduction there.
Well, you know, need to give you one that is close to your title as I possibly can, but it doesn't always come out the way that I intend, but we're just glad to have you here, Paul.
We're happy to be here. Here we are in November.
Man, wow. And you know, if you were out any yesterday or the day before, you know, by the temperature, you wouldn't have thought that it was November.
Right. You'd think it was still September.
Right, but you know, it's still a nice day today.
It's gorgeous out.
But I understand, you know, tonight and tomorrow night, it's going to get down into the upper 30s, so we'll be back on track for November.
A little touch of reality there. How's that?
That's right.
Yeah, and it is early November, and we know one thing that happens on the first Saturday in November is that we have to turn our clocks back.
Yeah.
So we might be really early for church on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Now, how does that go? You spring forward
and
fall back.
Yeah, fall back.
So daylight savings time ends at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, and that's when we go back to standard time. So before you go to bed on Saturday night, turn your clock back 1 hour, so you'll get an extra hour of sleep, and then when you get up on Sunday morning, you should be right on time, and when you show up for early services, you won't be the only one there.
That's right, yeah.
So, but again, remember to turn your clocks back 1 hour before you go to bed on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Paul, you know, it seems the older that you get, it takes a little bit more getting used to the time changing. You know, I'm at the point now, I would kind of like for us to, you know, stay on.
Pick one and stay with it?
That's right. But, you know, a lot of times now, you know, it's still dark, you know, up until, you know, close to 7:30 or so. And I know we've got a lot of school children that's, you know, out and about, you know, going to school, catching the school bus. And so this right here will make it better on the school kids, but those of you that are used to getting home off of work in the afternoon and having a, you know, few hours of daylight, that's going to come to an end pretty quickly.
We're coming on the season where we leave for work, it's just getting light out, and we go home and it's dark.
Yeah, that's true.
But you know, the day length is getting a little bit shorter till we get to the end of December, and you know, the winter solstice or equinox or whatever they call it, and then the day's getting longer again. But anyway, something else happens when we change the day, our times of day like we do, we fall back, is that we also have to be more aware of what's crossing the road in front of us.
Right.
After this time change thing goes through, because you know, historically the number of car deer accidents go up immediately after our time change, because we're putting cars going on the roads about the peak travel times of some of our wildlife.
Right.
And they tend to cross the roads and not be aware. Maybe the roads weren't as busy before, and suddenly they're busy, and now they're crossing the road, and there's cars coming at them. So I urge people to be more alert and more aware when they're traveling after the time change immediately. And they're coming on the breeding season or the rut for deer, and they kind of lose their senses a little bit.
Right.
They're thinking about other things than what's that thing coming at me with those bright lights on it.
Yes.
So just be a little extra careful. Maybe slow down a few miles per hour and give yourself a few more seconds to identify. Whoops, that's a deer. I don't want to hit it.
Yeah, and a lot of times, if you see a deer standing on the side of the road, if it's safe and it's not a lot of traffic behind you, it would be a good idea to almost come to a stop and give the deer right away.
Give it a wide berth at least.
That's exactly right.
They can jump in front of you very, very quickly.
And it happens so fast. I'm glad you made mention of the time change coming up the weekend. And, when we have to change the clocks, it's also a good opportunity for you to go ahead and check the batteries in your smoke
That's
alarm,
right. Yep.
or at least check it.
Check and make sure the batteries are still good. And I know a lot of fire companies all recommend go ahead and change the batteries anyway.
That's
So
right.
That way, they may be good this week, but 2 weeks from now they may not be good.
So that would be a good time to do that. And I've heard some other people say that it is still some mattresses out there that people flip. And they always say that they always, turn their mattress when the time changes. And that's kind of a reminder to do that as well. So
hadn't had that one pass by me before, Bob. I'm glad you brought it up. That's
So
good.
I know a lot of the mattresses that they make these days, you can't flip them, but they still do make a lot of them.
Still do make those you can flip over.
Yeah, and kind of get more life out of it. So, but again, just remember, the time changes this weekend, Saturday night.
Coming right up.
Before you go to bed, turn that clock back 1 hour.
And gain that hour of sleep we lost in the spring.
That's right. Paul, last week on the show, we were talking about some things, and you brought to light some things that I was not familiar with. And one of the things that we had talked about with the acorns that are falling off of the trees, that you were saying that if you've got a lot of acorns in your pastures for your cows and things like that, that acorns can be really harmful to cows.
They can.
To where they may not be harmful to the deer or hogs. But I was talking with someone earlier this week, and we was talking about the amount of acorns this year. And, the guy told me, he said, well, you know what I've done before? He said, I'll rake the acorns up.
Yep.
And he said, I'll put them in plastic bags. And he said, if I have room in my freezer, he said, I will freeze the acorns. And he said, then, sometimes about mid-December, he said, on some of my, baited plots, he said, I'll start putting those acorns out. He said, and the deer love them. And he said, it saves me a little bit of money, from buying corn. And so, hey, that's something I had never thought about.
Well, I know of people that actually will rake up the acorns and bag them up and sell them to other farmers to use in place of corn, or other hunters or whatever, or people that want to see deer.
Right.
To use in place of corn. And I do know of a landowner over in Warren County. That's a little ways from here, but he actually planted a little plantation of oak trees just for that purpose. He was going to go into business marketing acorns that way.
Wow.
Talk about a niche market.
Well,
But yeah, he was doing that, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go and see that little farm, that field he had planted full of young oak trees that were already bearing acorns, by the way.
well, now, Paul, is it any use for acorns other than maybe feeding, wildlife? Do you know of any use for them?
Well, to me, the main use for them is to feed, the squirrels and the deer and other things that would eat acorns. Some of the birds eat acorns too. I don't know of a lot of uses for them. I have heard of people actually roasting them and trying them that way. If you've ever tasted an acorn, they're pretty bitter, to my taste at
Right.
least. I have tasted them, yes, I'll admit that.
Yeah.
But I've heard of people kind of grinding them up and mixing them with their coffee grounds even sometimes. I haven't tasted that kind of coffee, but I've heard of it.
Well,
People do put chicory also in coffee, so you never know.
Well-
That might be the next fancy coffee flavor or something. Who knows? We might have hit something here, Rob.
well, you never know. And when you talk about acorns, it kind of makes me think of tree nuts and thinking about chestnuts. Our neighbor, when he used to cook molasses, he had some chestnuts and he would put them on the side of his molasses cooker to kind of roast them a little bit.
Yeah.
And chestnuts is not really something that I have developed a taste for, but it's people up in Virginia that has chestnut farms, and chestnuts are quite expensive to sell to restaurants and things like that. And I know that they have a heck of a time controlling the deer on chestnut farms. But what I'm getting at is, it may be a good opportunity for those of you that have a lot of acorns. Maybe you could bag them up and maybe you could start selling them to some of the deer hunters. You never know. Paul, if you would, let's talk a little bit about cattle. Here it is to where, it may not be so good of grazing for them coming up over the next, month or so. Now, it would really be nice if all the cattle farmers had plenty of pasture where they could keep rotating the cattle to where they could graze plenty of forage.
Right.
Now, is it necessary if cattle has somewhat grazing available and you are feeding them a good quality hay, is it necessary to feed them any kind of minerals or sweet feed or anything like that?
Yeah. If you've got good forage available either through the pasture or through the hay, then you don't necessarily need to feed them grain, or a lot of farmers like to use the protein tubs that you can go down and buy. We do recommend that you keep minerals out all the time for cattle, for other livestock too. But minerals, sometimes it's kind of hard to get through the pasture or through the hay, and we want to make sure the mineral supply is adequate for all the functions that go on within the cow's body or in the goat's body or the sheep's body. They need to keep the mineral and vitamin balance up too. And then sometimes those aren't supplied adequately through the forages or even maybe through the sweet feed that we give them. So we do recommend that. But this time of year, going into the winter season, or we call it the feeding season, if you will, we're fortunate we haven't had a frost yet, except in a few scattered places. I've seen a couple of kudzu things that got hit by a little bit of frost, but yeah, we have had some, but we haven't had that what we call a killing frost, where everything gets coated and it gets cold enough to just stop plant growth. So we're fortunate we do have some grazing still left in our pastures. So but I think it's a good time of year to go out and assess your cow herd. We'll talk about cows specifically here. But you can do this for other animals too, horses, goats, sheep. It's harder with sheep because of the wool, but we'd like to recommend that cattle farmers in particular go out and do an assessment of their cow herd. We call it body condition scoring. And what that is, Rob, is just kind of going out and getting an idea of how does my herd look? Are they too thin? Am I feeding them too much and they're looking a little bit like they got a little overweight, let's say, or carrying too much condition, as a lot of people will express it that way. There's problems on both ends of the scale, so we've got been developed over the years a body condition scale that goes from 1 to 9, with 5 being in the middle.
Right.
And we try to most times of the year we like to see our cattle scoring around a 5, 5.5, or 6. You know, especially maybe going into the feeding season, we'd like to have a little extra reserve. A lot of times our cows are either have a calf by their side that they're feeding, you know, still milking for, or we got cattle that are gestating. So we need to make sure they're in good condition so that we know we're supplying both the cow adequately enough with the nutrients she needs, plus enough for either to produce milk for the calf or to develop that calf as it's still in the uterus.
Right.
So by going out and assessing that, we can, well, let's go out and say my cows are too thin. You know, they're scoring a 4 or hopefully not below a 3. You know, when you get below a 3, then we got some real major issues.
Right.
We're starting to have some malfunctions of some of the organs and things as they get that way. But we want to get them back up to a 5 as soon as we can. And so they might need some extra groceries for that. I know we like our groceries, so our cows like theirs too, and theirs just take a different form. They take the form of hay. Dairy farmers feed corn silage. But a lot of times we'll go down to the farm store, the feed store, and pick up you mentioned sweet feed. That's a mixture of corn and wheat and oats maybe, and a little molasses put in there to make it sweet.
Right.
And we can put some minerals in with that mix or some salt. But it's still better to have the minerals available separately. But we might need to add something to that. But if also, when we see our cattle are too thin, we might want to also go check our forage that we have and see just what the quality of it is. And we can do that with a forage test. We talked about that on the program before. We're happy to help anybody that's not familiar with that process, how it works. So we can help take the samples, box it up. We just need them to write the check to the lab because of $10 a sample to have it checked. And I'll tell you the protein that's in the hay that you're feeding. They'll tell you what the energy level and the digestible nutrients is in that hay, and we can take that information and say, okay, if you got a 7 or 8% protein hay and the digestible nutrients is lower than it should be, we can say, okay, go down. We can either custom mix a ration and have somebody blend it for you. It might pay a little bit more for the blending, but it'll meet the cow's exact needs. Or you can say, okay, this is the minute. We'll say you need to supplement so many pounds a day with, say, a 14% sweet feed.
Right,
just for example, to get that cow's, it's going to increase her energy level, so she's going to be out looking for feed more, to graze more. She's going to do a better job taking care of herself, and if she takes care of herself, she helps take care of her calf better. Because a cow, if she's not getting the nutrients she needs, still has to feed that nursing calf. She still has to develop that calf that's in the uterus. And where's she going to get the energy to do that? She's going to pull it off her body.
Right, I understand.
And she's going to get thinner instead of gaining if we don't feed her right.
Well, I think that's a good point, and I want to get our hay tested to see what kind of protein level is dealing with, and also if you're raising your hay or if you're purchasing hay for your livestock, if you're raising your own hay, it'd be a good idea for you to get it tested. And if you're buying hay from someone, it doesn't hurt to ask, say, do you have your hay tested? Mm-hmm. And that way you'll kind of have some idea of what you're dealing with. And, that's better than the unknown. But one thing I wanted to mention, Paul, last week, you and I were talking about, and for some reason I can never remember the proper name of it, the malt barley. After it is used, they call it
brewer's grain.
The brewer's grain.
Yeah.
For some reason, I want to say miller's grain, but it's brewer's grain.
Right.
Well, I was at a gathering over the weekend, and it was actually a wedding, and I got to talking with a gentleman that works on a dairy farm who was a cousin of mine, and I got to asking him about, the brewer's grain. And they actually get it from Anheuser-Busch, and it comes out of Virginia. And we just got to talking about it a little bit, and he says that they get a shipment. I think he said every 21 days, and it's $70 per ton. But they mix this brewer's grain with other supplements and feeds,
Yeah.
and they come up with their own feed, and they also mix alfalfa hay, into this, and they're feeding it to the dairy cattle.
A lot of dairy farms mix their own rations.
Right.
They'll buy commodities like the brewer's grains. They'll buy some corn, some soybean meal, other types of commodities. And they'll mix their wagons. They can weigh out a certain amount, and they'll mix up however much they need to feed their cattle a day, and they'll put it in a total mixed ration with the corn silage and chopped alfalfa and different things like that. And they'll just, depending on the type of setup they have, they can drive that wagon through and just put the feed right out in front of the cattle. It works great.
And basically what they're doing is they're mixing up ever how many pounds of feed and rationings that they need to feed ever how many head of dairy cows that they are feeding. And so they're figuring, we want this dairy cow here to get, I'm going to just use this as an example, 10 pounds of, rations, at each feeding. Now, I don't know what that number is, but it's really interesting. And, I need to start making some notes of things that he has told me about milk production, because I think it's really interesting. And, I'm sure it's some people, but whenever I sit down to eat a bowl of cereal, or maybe to have some ice cream, or to drink a glass of milk, I never think about that cow, that produced that milk, and the farmers and the people that it took to get it to where it's actual, a consumable
Packaged
product.
up in the store, ready for us to go get it.
And so it's just, I'm interested about things kind of behind the scenes of what people have to do. And you talk about, this cattle conditioning, I was going to ask this question. I know typically, like in the springtime, I know you have hosted some Coggins clinics and vaccination clinics for horses, and it's a few that goes on here around, the Person County area. Now, as far as vaccinations for cattle is concerned, is that the time of the year that people should be vaccinating, or does people vaccinate in the wintertime, or do they, if they do vaccinate, do they just do it whenever they have the opportunity?
Well, sometimes it's whenever you get the opportunity, because most of our cattle farmers have small herds and may or may not have a job off the farm, so they got to do it when they can. But the best thing to do is, it's going to depend on whether you calve in the spring or calve in the fall. But most of the time, we strongly recommend vaccinating the calves for blackleg and other clostridial diseases, which fortunately can be done with just one shot. One prick with the needle, so to speak. If you've got so you have your calves in February, March. We call that spring calving. When they get 3 months old or so, that's when we recommend go ahead and vaccinate them if you don't vaccinate for anything else, be sure and do that.
For the blackleg?
For the blackleg, yes.
Okay.
If you got a fall calving herd, you say they're dropping calves in October, November, maybe January is a good time. January, February is a good time to go ahead and do that vaccination. And I know most farmers, when they work the herd, they want to get everything done that needs to be done. So if they need, say a wormer, that might be a good time to do it. Do the calf, vaccinate the calves. And there's also some vaccines that we recommend that the adult cattle get too.
Right.
But for the calves, to protect them, that's the crop that beef farmers have, is the calves that they're producing.
Right.
If you've got a cow-calf herd, so we want to protect them, as much as we can. And let's say you can vaccinate several herds of calves for blackleg and other clostridial diseases, and not spend as much money as you would lose if you lose just one calf.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've often wondered about, cattle farmers, how many of them are devoted enough to give, the vaccinations, to the cattle. Now, from what I have viewed from horse owners, I would say, from what I've seen at some of the clinics I've attended, but horse owners, I would say that it's less than 20% of people that give the actual different vaccinations to the horses than those that do. What would you say from the clinics you've seen?
The clinics I've seen, I think it's the other way around. Most of the folks that come to the clinics that I've worked with, and I work with 2 different veterinary hospitals to do the clinics.
Right.
Most of the folks that bring them up to the clinics do go ahead and add other vaccinations with it. They may not get all of the ones that are available, because that can get pretty pricey. Yeah. But they do vaccinate for some other things.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea, whether no matter what kind of livestock you may have, whether it's horses, cows, goats, sheep, hogs, you need to stay on top of deworming and vaccinations if needed, because as Paul said, a lot of times, when you factor in the cost, a lot of people look at the expense of that, but if you lose, part of your herd, you have
well, even at today's, beef prices have gone down a lot in the last 6, 8, 10 months.
Yeah.
But even at today's prices, say, what's a 300-pound calf bringing now? What, $1.50 a pound?
Yeah.
On live animal.
That's $450.
That buys a lot of vaccine.
It does that.
So, and vaccination programs kind of insurance for you too.
That's right.
It helps you keep more calves to be able to sell. At the end of the whatever growing season that you have, and that's money in your pocket. If you lose 1 or 2, that's the difference between making money or losing money.
Good point. Hey, we need to get a word on for one of our sponsors. Oh, we've got a caller? Okay. All right, let's go right here. Thank you for calling the Gardener's Corner program.
Good morning, Rob. All Pigman checking in.
Yes, sir. John, how you doing?
All right. I heard y'all on the show there, and you got talking about vaccinating cows and all, and blackleg. We had a farmer in our area that had 2 farmers really side by side with adjoining properties that had a blackleg outbreak this year.
Ooh.
One lost his herd bull plus about 10 calves.
Oh, boy.
In a short period of time, and another one lost, I think, a dozen young calves and all. And in question, one question I have is, what makes the blackleg like they had in their case? What triggered that for their cows? They weren't vaccinated, but why was it isolated to just their area?
Well,
one of my questions.
That's one thing that really can't be explained. The blackleg bacteria is out and generally all over, can be found just about anywhere. If you don't vaccinate, I guess I liken it playing roulette, of a certain kind. But and what triggered it specifically? It could have been weather conditions. It could have been they might have just pawed up the wrong part of the ground or something. But it's hard to say exactly what would have triggered that. There's so many different factors out there. Just suffice to say that the blackleg bacteria is out there. It is everywhere. We could take a sample and have it analyzed at the lab from just about anywhere in the country, and we could find some of the bacteria that causes blackleg.
Okay, I understand. And then, in fact, one of the farmers uses a piece of equipment of ours, a no-till drill,
Mm-hmm.
and I was of concern that what I should do? Was there any precautionary measures that I needed to take when I retrieved that equipment back to our farm that, wouldn't cause something? And I heard that a young calf or something that hadn't been vaccinated yet. But
Yeah.
I myself took the liberty to use, ammonia and Clorox. I think I used Clorox as a bleaching agent and washed that piece of equipment anywhere that I felt like it was touching the soil down. No one told me to do that, but I just felt like I maybe could stop the spore transfer.
Well, that could help with that, and certainly cleaning and disinfecting equipment when they go from one farm to another is a good idea, because that's practicing good biosecurity, we call it. It might not have you probably already have the blackleg, organism on your place,
I wasn't
but
with it at the time. I just knew he had that piece of equipment and he had this calf, blackleg
Right.
outbreak stuff.
well, I commend you for
Didn't wanna
taking
bring
that.
that back to the farm if it wasn't already there. But now
Right.
from learning from you, I understand it is everywhere.
It's there, but I commend you for taking that precaution. That's excellent.
John, a question for you. Do you all vaccinate y'all's cattle herd?
Yes, sir. We've got behind because we took on some new cattle into our operation that we've got behind on, but we've got a vaccination schedule, in place.
Right. Well,
That's good.
I was going to ask the question about blackleg, where it comes from, but so pretty much in a sense it can be anywhere.
It can, and I know people that don't vaccinate, and they don't vaccinate for years and years and years, and they say, well, I don't really need to because I've never had to deal with it. Well, you're taking a chance when you do that, and our recommendation, the Extension Service recommendation, is that's one. If you don't do anything else, that's one you really need to vaccinate calves for.
Yeah. John, appreciate you calling and making mention of that. And
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Enjoy the show when I can catch it.
well, appreciate it. Thank you. Now you have a good day.
Sure.
That gentleman that just called in, he is from up in the Castle County area, up around Cassville, and a lot of people around here are familiar with Cassville because they always have a really huge Christmas light display
wow.
up that way.
I'll have to check that out.
And but I've never met John before, but he calls the station from time to time, and me and him chit chat a little bit, and he's kind of involved with the farm that they have somewhere around 250 to 300 head of cattle, and if you did have blackleg to come through, that could be very
devastating.
It really could. It sure could. Let's get a word on for Iowa Pride Foods, makers of Iowa Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, and we'll be back with more here on the Gardener's Corner program. Goodness grows in North Carolina, and Iowa Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip is made locally in Roxborough. Pick up some for yourself and enjoy. You can get the Iowa Pride Premium Pimento Cheese regular, or for extra flavor, try the jalapeno added. Get some for yourself at T.G. Brooks Company, Supply Line Discounts, North Main IGA, Hurdle Mills Market and Butcher Shop, Twins Meat Market, Food Line, or just Save. Or if you're in Uptown Roxborough and get the hankering for some Iowa Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip, you can enjoy it at Cole's Pharmacy, Tricia's Espresso, and Snappy's Cafe. That's Iowa Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip. Whether you're having it for a meal or a snack, it's good. Here we are back on the Gardener's Corner program. Mr. Paul Westfall is our guest. Paul is the director of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service offices for Granville and Person counties. Paul, here it is, November. And let me think here. 3 weeks from today will be Black Friday.
It will, won't it?
I think it will.
That's the day I stay out of stores.
So, with that being said, Thanksgiving is 3 weeks from yesterday. So, if any of you people that raise flowers, if you have a garden, or if you have field crops, Paul is going to pass along some information that will save you some money if you go ahead and act before Thanksgiving.
Yes, and that's about soil testing. Everybody, we strongly recommend if you're growing any kind of a crop, as you mentioned, Rob, whether it be flowers or your vegetable garden or your lawn, if you take, want a nice green lawn, or if you're producing field crops or pastures or hay, anything, you need to know what the nutrients are available in the soil, so you know what you need to add to make sure you got the right number of, or right balance of nutrients out there for your whatever you're growing. So most of the year, soil testing is done at no charge. However, the last few years, there is a season during the year that the Soils Lab at the Department of Agriculture charges a $4 per sample fee. And they say it's December 1st, but technically, we have to get the samples there before Thanksgiving in order for the samples to be run at no charge.
Right.
So be aware, everybody's listening. And tell your neighbors if they need some soil testing done, that's a good idea to go ahead and get those samples submitted before Thanksgiving in order to avoid that $4 per sample fee. And particularly for some of our crop farmers, we've got several fields that they need to have sampled. Say they've got 100 different fields. That's 100 different samples at $4 a sample. Suddenly we're talking $400.
Yes.
And I've actually had that happen to a
Wow,
farmer.
it adds up.
It adds up pretty fast. Some people say, well, it's only $4, that's fine. Well, if it's 1 or 2 or 3 samples, it doesn't bother us too bad. But when you're get the volume going, the volume of the price goes up right along with it.
You know what they say, pennies make dollars.
Eventually.
And Paul, kind of to relate what you just said, I heard someone talking on the phone one day, and he was a pretty prominent businessman, and had done really well for himself. And he said, you know what? He said it's easier for me to save $20,000 than it is to make $20,000.
All right.
So go
Believe
ahead,
it.
get your soil samples turned in before Thanksgiving. Get your results back, go buy them. So you'll be saving money and not having to pay for your soil testing fees. And then when you follow the recommendations, you'll be making money if you go by the suggested recommendations. So in a sense, you're getting, paid on both ends.
That's right. You get something out of it no matter what.
That's right. Hey, we
Good.
need to get a word on for Sandling golf cars, and then we'll come back and we'll be talking about the Butner Bull Test sale.
There you go.
That'll be coming up in December, and never been to that sale, but who knows, we may have to
show
check
up,
it
huh?
out this year.
There you go.
So we'll get a word on for Sandling golf cars.
Sandling Golf Cars is a place you will find a huge selection of club car and easy-go golf cars. Whether you're wanting a new or pre-owned unit, a gasoline or electric golf car, maybe you want something basic or fully customized, you need to go see them at Sandling Golf Cars. Al, Hillary, and Will is there to serve you weekdays 8 until 5:30. Saturdays, 9 until 1. Sandling Golf Cars is located 613 Lewis Street in Oxford. Call 919-693-4626 or toll free 1-800-221-9267. Sandling Golf Cars also has a large selection of utility trailers, dump trailers, stock trailers, enclosed trailers, equipment trailers, and they also carry tow dollies. Stop in and see them this week at Sandling Golf Cars, where they also have Wilmington grills. Are you in need of repair service on your golf car? See Bradley and Dennis. They have Trojan batteries and a full line of parts and service there for you at Sandling Golf Cars, 613 Lewis Street in Oxford. Call 919-693-4626 or toll free 1-800-221-9267. Visit them on the World Wide Web at sandlinggolfcars.com. They're located 613 Lewis Street in Oxford.
Here we are back on the Gardeners Corner program. In just a few minutes, we'll get a word on for T.G. Brooks Company, one other sponsor of us here on the Gardeners Corner program. Paul, let's talk a little bit. You know, the guy that called in was talking about a farmer that lost a prize bull to blackleg, but coming up on Friday, December 16th, it's going to be the Butner Bull Test Sale, and it'll take place at the Livestock Arena on Kennedy Mill Road in Granville County, correct?
That's correct, just south of Oxford.
Now, tell us a little bit about the bull test and what all is involved in that.
The bull tests, they've been doing this at Butner, and they also have a test out in Waynesboro, which is on the western end of the state. But the bull tests are, you know, breeders of purebred cattle, and there are sometimes some crossbred bulls that come through. But they will consign some of their bulls to go through this test. And what this test does, they're fed the same ration to all the bulls, you know, that's done on the Butner Experiment Station, the beef unit down there. They're fed the same ration. They're measured. They're weighed. Take a lot of information from them. They know exactly how much they eat, so they can calculate their average daily gain, how many pounds per day that they gain weight as they're growing. Because these are young bulls. You know, they go on tests just basically after they're weaned, and then they'll be on tests for a certain number of days, and they weigh them periodically through there. But they check their feed consumption, they check their average daily gain, they'll calculate how many pounds of feed it took to make a pound of gain. So they're measuring the efficiency of how well these cattle can put on muscle, and how these bulls can do that. And they'll get information about, let's say if they're Angus bulls, and most of them are at the bull test, they'll compare that back to how does the average for the Angus breed go. Are these bulls above average or below average for all these characteristics that they're looking at? And they'll also, since most of them are also purebred, they've got data going back generations, so they can do some actual, what they call expected progeny differences, or EPDs as we shorten it down to say, okay, we can expect this young bull to perform this well going into your cow herd. So there's some lot of information that folks can get about these young bulls that are coming off test. And this is a good place for farmers to go and get a performance tested bull. You know, they've been fed a certain way, and people get upset sometimes because they take them out of a place where they've had all the groceries, all the food that they want, because they encourage them to eat.
Right.
And then you take them to a farm and suddenly change their ration to, okay, you're getting some hay and whatever you can get off, and they lose weight for a while before they get adjusted to the new situation. But these bulls come off tests. They've been certified that they should be able to breed cows, and they're ready to work right after they get off tests and go through the sale and go on to the farm. Now, not every bull that's in the test will actually be sold because some of them don't meet the criteria for the sale.
Right.
They don't gain enough weight. They have to have too much feed to get a pound of gain, or they don't pass the breeding soundness exam that they have to go through. So farmers going into this bull test sale can be reasonably assured that these are some bulls that they can take back to their farm and should do well in their herds.
And again, this is the Butner Bull Test Sale, and it will be on Friday, December the 16th at the Granville County Livestock Center down on Kennedy Mill Road. Now, don't confuse it with the one there on Highway 15.
That's no longer an auction.
That's right. So just bear that in mind. But we'll try to keep you reminded about that.
We'll
And
get more details as we get
yeah.
closer to that date.
sounds good. Let's get a word on for T.G. Brooks Company. Been in business since 1936.
November, the month to start preparing for holiday seasons ahead and picking up your cold weather supplies and needs. Time for wood stoves. It's also time for your Thanksgiving and Christmas hams. We're talking about the famous T.G. Brooks Company old-time cured country hams. People come from miles around to get one of these hams. It is also the time to do last-minute lawn preparation. On some of the warmer days, you can still utilize that day to spread seed, fertilizer, and spruce up. Then next spring, your yard will have a head start. For the leaves, T.G. Brooks Company has your rakes for the lawn. And remember, T.G. Brooks Company, for all you need for Thanksgiving. T.G. Brooks stocks pots and cast iron and aluminum pots and double gas burners. They have hoop cheese. Don't forget they have the Taylor water stove parts too. Cold weather means to check on your stove pipe and pipe fittings 6-inch and 8-inch. And they have stove mats. Check out the new Comfort Glow infrared quartz heaters for that extra warmth, and they are fan forced for wide heat dispersion. Always keep the pets in mind with cedar shavings. They have Bartlett animal feeds. T.G. Brooks Company has wood splitters, wedges, axes, mauls, and of course plenty of gloves. Bird seed available in 25 and 50-pound bags, and sunflower and black oil seed in stock. Each evening you'll love a steak. So pick a night, stop into T.G. Brooks Company and get a supply of those hand-cut ribeyes. Last call for pansies, the biggest and the prettiest. They also have the Grizzly coolers and mugs to keep beverages hot or cool. T.G. Brooks Company, Helena Mariah Road in beautiful Timberlake, serving the homeowner, farmer, and construction worker since 1936.
Here we are back on the Gardener's Corner program. And Paul, once again, our time has done slipped away.
It sure has. Time
But-
flies when you have fun.
But
right?
it sure does. It sure does. We want to say a thank you to our sponsors, T.G. Brooks Company. We appreciate their support. No matter the season of the year, they always have something for you. And remember, Thanksgiving and Christmas time, get you one of those country hams from T.G. Brooks Company. And no matter whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, you can't go wrong with the hand-cut ribeyes at T.G. Brooks Company. We appreciate their support. Sandling Golf Cars. Anybody that's in the cattle business, whether you've got sheep, goats, maybe you've got cows or horses, they have stock trailers at Sandling Golf Cars in Oxford, a good selection. Appreciate their support. And last but not least, we appreciate the support of Our Pride Foods, makers of Our Pride Premium Pimento Cheese Spread and Dip. With that, we're going to bid you our farewells. Thanks to Paul Westfall of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service, and also thanks to Kilby, David Bratcher Jr., for getting us on the air each and every week. Want to wish you and yours a happy and safe weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next week here on the Gardener's Corner program.